Hi, good morning. Lacey Knight, emergency physician by background, Chief Health Informatics Officer for Piedmont, and involved in leading our AI and innovation work amongst the clinical informatics space.
And I'm Steve Porter. I'm Corporate Senior Vice President for Piedmont Healthcare, and I am also a CEO of one of their largest hospitals. And under my Corporate Vice President role, I have system-wide anesthesia responsibility, and I have robotics responsibility for the healthcare system.
Very good. We met about 2 years ago, and I met Steve at a conference, very operationally focused. The problems he knew that he wanted to solve, he had an idea of how, and introduced us to Dr. Lacey Knight. That's really thinking systemness and standardization, and together, maybe you guys can tell us a little bit about Piedmont and the challenges that you were trying to tackle from those two perspectives.
Sure. So Piedmont's been on a pretty aggressive growth journey. So I joined 5.5 years ago. We had 11 hospitals. I was warned we were going to get a little bit bigger. I did not think that 3 years later we'd be 27 hospitals, which we are. And so we've been so focused on successful integration that we're not necessarily looking at opportunities, but coming out of the last integration, November 23rd, we've kind of refocused on trying to figure out where, if we make the right investments, strategically we can help move the organization forward. So part of my responsibility has been to help identify and opportunities to invest in, accelerate, to implement transformative change. Mm-hmm. And typically looking for operational partners that are willing to jump into the deep end of the pool with us.
And I would say from my perspective on the operational side, same challenges as every other healthcare system, regardless of your size. Limited capital given the current economic environments facing healthcare systems. Higher demand for equipment and technology, specifically on the robotics side, where you have a very large robotics program, and robotics is growing as new and younger physicians are coming out, demanding access to new systems, new platforms. And when we're looking at how do we distribute our capital in a way that's meaningful to support growth while maintaining the investments we need to make throughout the entire system, we had to really look at how are we optimizing the utility and use of our current robotic programs and systems. And by engaging with Qventus, we really identified a lot of opportunities where we're using our robotic systems or our robotic ORs inefficiently through non-robotic case volume. So,
to kind of begin our partnership, what was missing from your environment? Like, what tooling, what was preventing you from achieving that before?
Boy, where should I start? I would say in the perioperative space, we did not have a system approach to optimizing the OR platform or the robotic space. I think Steve had been thinking about it. And then we've also had challenges with just very simple things like making it easy to find cases availability, making it easy for surgeons in their clinical practices to schedule. We had some maybe operational decisions that probably proved a little bit more challenging. And then I think that block time is always, I think, an opportunity for organizations to manage that. And so we've always been thinking about what are things that we can do to make our call center more efficient, that handles a lot of the scheduling. What are things that we can do to make the clinicians more attracted to Piedmont just from providing a better experience? And then what are the ways that we can make the organization more efficient from an operational perspective?
And Steve, you have really great relationships with your physicians. Mm-hmm. How did this program kind of help you continue to take great care and ensure that surgeons with choice, that your hospitals are a destination for them?
Yeah, I think there were a few things. I have to go back just a little. We've grown tremendously over the last 5 years. We've doubled the size of the system in terms of hospitals and such. And with that, we had quite a few different practices, different perspectives in terms of the optimization of robotics, optimization of operations. So a lot of what we got was physicians really looking for a consistent approach to things. How can I know that I have consistent access to the services and resources that I need? So for us is really getting the physicians to the table, hearing about their concerns. Hey, why is it Dr. X over here can do 6 robotic cases in a day, but this hospital can only drive 2 robotic cases a day, same type of cases and such. So how do we become a learning system? How do we go best practice at one hospital and distribute that best practice at another? So involving the physicians in that engagement, working with great operators, Wendy over here that many have met, really bringing physician operators together to utilize best practice, but also technology in solving the problem.
And then we started with surgical growth in a focused way. Maybe tell the group kind of how you thought about a data-driven approach to success, and then where we went with scale, and then we'll move kind of into what we did with the robot.
Well, I think maybe I'll start with just talking about how we learned about it. So I think you typically will have a sense when there's an opportunity, and I think we didn't really know how to look at it. We found that when we were starting to look at the data internally, we had independent definitions by hospital about how people were deciding what was acceptable use or optimized use. So the first thing that Steve and I had kind of set forth was that we're going to do it the same way so we know what's happening. And I think Qventus brought to us really the robotic optimizing opportunity, which was pretty significant. And then, this is where Steve, as an expert in this space, really kind of led the charge on doing that.
And so then through that, in the surgical growth, to start with, our first phase was just surgical growth, finding more access, promoting the time to the right people, ensuring the surgeons in their offices were as efficient as possible. I think we saw some really tremendous results before we moved to the next phase of robotics. Any feeling around results and how they impacted cultural, operational, or mission towards systemness?
I'll let you start.
I think one of the biggest, where do I want to go? Someone made a comment earlier about sometimes you being too successful. And for us, this did allow us to really focus on specific specialties, around where we wanted to target growth, robotics being one of them. And for us, and I have completely lost track, so I've got every minute here.
Well, I'll maybe talk about some of the background. I mentioned the integration piece that we'd had, and unfortunately, those that were not directly involved in the innovation usually kind of got the impression that they were less important to us in the system office. And so we developed kind of this reputation of not investing in the types of things that may be meaningful to all the entities. And so, in my part, joining Piedmont was really focused on trying to change that concept and helping the entities and the physicians understand that, there are things that we can do that actually are impactful. And so this for us was really pretty easy to sell. So there's obviously an economic incentive for the CEOs, an economic incentive for the physicians, and it's very easy for us to communicate that we're trying to make the scheduling process easier. We're trying to make sure you have access to the robotic program when you need it. We're trying to reduce your interaction with the call center for scheduling. So those types of things, I think, have helped us teach the health system that really, if you have the right opportunities and you get them to us, we're willing to make the right investments. And I think the method we were asked to do it, I think, also shows it, because we had started really kind of this early phase piece with just 3 hospitals, including Steve's. And I think, if I remember right, in our mind, we were thinking, well, if this goes well, maybe we'll take a year to expand it. But it went so well that after, I think the first month and a half, they said, how about next spring, which was about 5 months after we were completing the first phase. So I think when something's valuable, important, provides the benefits to the health system, it's done from a system approach and the benefits are achieved early, and then we prioritize getting access to everybody else. It does help with that system support approach.
So once we were able to get to this standardization and unlock some of this opportunity, we introduced the Piedmont team to the robotic optimizer, which is an optional additive piece of software, part of surgical growth, that allows us to think about Da Vinci and the surgeons in the Da Vinci cohort and the analytics needed very uniquely. Piedmont, Steve, you have 32 robots.
We do.
And you run them really efficiently before we found you. So as we brought you this opportunity and said, we think we can help you do more, we can help you be more strategic with how we facilitate that access, you didn't necessarily believe in it fully to begin with. There was a little bit of skepticism. Maybe tell the group.
No, there was skepticism, and any former Intuitive folks in the room, I apologize. I've always had a little skepticism with Intuitive and the sales pitch and such. But for me, what I was able to, and I touched on it earlier, is when we were able to truly make the business case of what each additional robotics case would bring to us and the cost of doing non-robotic cases in a very expensive environment, it was easier to make that business case. And looking at we had such an amazing increase in demand occurring that we had to figure something out quickly that did not rely on us just making $1.5 million investments, with no real end in sight. So for me, this and the physicians in the system, this became a quick, easy ROI investment or equation to solve when we were able, within the same capacity, to drive the additional volume that you see here. It really did make sense. I'm not going to say every single increase case was tied to this, but this was a major factor in what we're able to do.
So through that, I think the 32 robots that the Piedmont system has saw 2.5 incremental cases per robot per month, which is 235 more robotic cases without adding any capacity.
Yes.
And so operating top of license, did you feel any return from your surgeons or schedulers or?
We got a lot of positive return from surgeons, but then also, as I mentioned earlier, we kind of, have a problem now. They've gotten used to driving more volume, and they now feel that we've been too successful because now surgeons are having a hard time getting their cases in. So we're either looking at having to extend our prime time robotic surgical days. But now we know with each incremental investment of a new robotic system, we can drive the return on that case for that robotic system even more because of the efficiencies that we're gaining through the Qventus partnership.
Very good. I want to make sure we leave time to ask any questions of Steve, Dr. Knight, about surgical growth, about robotics, about Piedmont, anything that we can address for you all.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no. Jackie?
When one of your own asks questions, this is not good.
You did hand her a dead mic, right?
With a large health system, how do you think about getting consistent success across a number of hospitals that maybe have varying approaches to the application and adoption?
Okay, so
She works for you.
I know. I guess that's how that's go. I think I see somebody else at the table may have a question. So most of the stuff that we're asked to do that is going to be a high value investment for the health system, we know, we've been at Piedmont for long enough, that typically if it works, that whatever timeline we thought we were going to have is just going to be compressed. It's just how it goes. And so we were pretty strategic around how we would engage people and how we make sure that the opportunity and the story links in with those individuals. And so in this case, very early on, we connected with all of the people that had relevant contact with the physician community. So we had conversations and presentations with the directors of every hospital. We talked to the chief operating officers, the chief nursing officers when they had OR responsibility. We talked to the CEOs several times. We partnered with our physician outreach team, which I think was a unique approach because those are folks that are trying to make sure that the new physicians understand what the community is like and what offerings the hospital has. So we included them in helping get the word out and understanding the value and also communicating what concerns were there. We partnered with the call center operations because that scheduling team was going to have to handle an additional method of requesting cases until we had the adoption. And I think we were strategic around making sure we engaged the right types of physicians. We talked to the local directors and executives around which physicians do we need to have involved in this early so that they can speak to what we're trying to accomplish, why it's valuable. And I don't want to suggest like this was easy, because in the beginning, some of the physicians, even the employed ones, said like, why would we want to do this? And we had to kind of go back and forth and try to connect all the dots for those teams. But our approach is to try to identify the influencers in the right space and make sure we've connected with them, that they understand the story, recognizing that they have to carry the message on beyond our team.
I think too, if I can take a second, probably every healthcare system that grows deals with this. In our past, as we grew, everybody felt they had the ability to say yes or no versus having this will be the way we're going to do it. And so I think this helped us change our approach to how we manage large-scale projects across the system. As Lacey said, we brought people together, but we relied heavily on Qventus. I think you heard me ask what is best practice? You've got great partners out there already. If there's a best practice, why would we allow us to say no? Mm-hmm. Why don't we just adopt best practice and go from there? And so we did really change our paradigm quite a bit by stating we're making a decision as a system. You don't have a lot of choice as to whether or not you follow. Mm-hmm. Or it takes too much time, energy, and cost to allow 19 different voices to try to operate it 19 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good cop, bad cop approach. I'm not going to say which one I was.
Misty?
Just a two-part. I have a loud mouth, so you may not need it. Anyway, two-part question. One, are you familiar with the AMP program through Intuitive? And two is, have you considered looking at that to grow your fleet? And if so, how do you think you would infuse Qventus into help managing those systems? We're in a unique situation to where we have half owned, half AMP, and it's particularly challenging to make sure that we are optimizing those units. Have you considered that for your space?
I want to make sure I heard. Have we considered the AMP program?
Mm-hmm. To expand your fleet?
We have, and I would tell you, for us, I think it's very attractive. As a system, we don't deploy our capital that way. We usually like to just purchase and not deal with it. There have been questions, and I don't want to get into open a quagmire here, but how do you capitalize through the AMP program and along that line? We're very fortunate as a system today to be able to purchase our systems through capital and allocation. I think as we look at how do we truly now optimize, we have hospitals that don't have robotic systems that probably cannot support a full investment today. So we're looking at if hospital A needs a new robotic system, how do we move maybe the old robotic system to a smaller community hospital, or is AMP appropriate for one of our more rural hospitals in order to give them access to the technology when it won't be successful in the true capital purchase plan. But then working with the optimization programs and such, defining how, when we do make those investments, either through AMP or whatever, what is the appropriate target, operational target, efficiency targets and such we should expect with any new program opening and developing within the system.
Yeah, and that's kind of the space, the challenge that we're in right now. We're relying heavily on our robotic optimization and the relationship we have with Qventus to make sure that we are deploying that, because that's the same thing we've done. We've moved some owned systems around to allow appropriate utilization of those AMP systems, and I just want to know if you had considered that, and if so, how you would rely on Qventus to help hold your hand through that.
Anything?
I have nothing to add.
I think that's something I really transparently need to really explore with Qventus. I'd love to hear more about you, how you see how you may approach that. Again, Qventus gives us access to information and that we did not have before. I would say one of our limitations as a system before the engagement with Qventus was it was very hard to get a system-wide picture as to our robotics programs and how they were operating. Again, a lot of that came through the rapid acquisitions where every hospital had a different robotics committee, a different approach to how they utilize robotics. So for us, Qventus is helping us become more consistent as a system through structure and reporting.
I agree. It's more predictive. So a lot of our dashboards or reports that we get, even through Epic or through Intuitive, are anecdotal, and you're usually making, Monday morning quarterback decisions instead of true proactive strategic planning of those systems. So
Agree.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Dr. Seth?
Before you chose to invest in creating capacity, what was your indication that you actually had 250 cases in your depot or in your unmet need that those cases would be there?
Okay. I'm having a little hard time.
So basically, how did you know that you had the demand to be able to let the optimizer unlock that success?
I had physicians yelling at me every day. No, I mean, the reality is, as a system, we're growing. We had coordinated discussions with our physician recruitment team. How many physicians do we have coming into the system who are demanding robotic access day one? We're looking at, our surgical services and the cases that are now being done robotically that were being done either open or minimally invasive a year prior. And so what's the growth rate to robotics? So we were doing a lot of projections around, incoming demand that we don't have today, plus shifting demand based on the way that we have been pushing from a quality perspective, a safety perspective, an infection control perspective. We've really had across the system, Wendy, I think we were looking at about 38% of our surgeries were still being done on an open basis. So as we want to push harder towards minimally invasive includes robotics. So we had our CGCs pushing on that front as well. So we see that the demand is coming through 3 or 4 different venues, and we knew this would be successful from that perspective. Did that answer your question?
If I can add one more thing too, like the OR that Steve and Wendy run is our most efficient place. And I think when we started to ask the different facilities how they were managing this, some weren't. And so when just in our discovery we realized that everybody's doing it differently, that to us always feels like there's a significant opportunity.
Yeah, going in when we had hospitals saying, hey, I need a new robotic system, and we really get into it, and you're only using your system 42% of the time, how do we push utilization of the existing investments?
Thank you both very much. Appreciate the discussion. Thank you for the questions.